Welcome back to Cinema Summary. Today I am going to explain adventure comedy family film from 2013 titled Jack the Giant Slayer. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Once upon a time, a small boy named Jack lived with his father. His mother used to tell him a story about giants before she died, which he adored reading. The plot is as follows. A long time ago, the monks discovered miraculous beans that they thought would grow into a road to God. Unfortunately, they discovered something else between heaven and them as they reached the top of the stalk, Earth, the area called Gantua, and it was the home of the fierce giants. The Titans have arrived on Earth, grabbing and robbing mankind and developing a taste for human flesh. The small princess, Isabel, is charmed by the same story. Her mother reads it to her and asks if she is afraid of the two-headed commander of the giant. Despite the girl's protests, the mother persists. The monks had once again turned to the dark arts in order to subdue the giants. Their melted hearts were fashioned into a crown. King Eric enslaved the giants with the crown. They were taken back to Gantua and imprisoned there. The silence returned when he severed the stem. To his personal property along with the king and queen, there are relics from that historical period interred. The story was later made into a legend. Jack inquires about the return of his father as his father tucks him into bed. Jack inquires about the return of the giants. He informs him that they would be slaughtered by the king's noble-blooded guardians. According to his father, the giants aren't real. King Eric was, in some respects, real, according to Isabel's mother. She is a direct descendant of his forefathers. When the girl claims to have visited the catacombs and seen his grave, her mother catches her walking around the palace. She isn't offended, though, because she wants something. She must be aware of it if she is to one day become queen and have the power to transform the world. A more favorable atmosphere when Jack's father leaves the room. The kid resumes reading the story. Legend has it that the giants will come to Earth to fight and slay the last of Eric's relatives. Jack's uncle sends him to the city to sell the horse after 10 years, urging him not to become distracted. Jack tries to sell his horse and wagon when he arrives in town. His eye is instantly drawn to the village theater. They recount King Eric's story once more. Colossi Jack observes him staring at a stunning woman in the audience. Before the show concludes, 3 males begin harassing the girl, so Jack decides to interfere. Following her out the door is a good idea. After being hit in the face, he begs the men to let the girl go. Behind him, a royal guardian appears out of nowhere. Because they don't want to cause any trouble, the men apologize to the guardian and fall to their knees as they see Princess Isabel mount one of the horses. This has bewildered Jack. When he turns around, the guardian tells him to kneel. He notices that his cart has been removed outside the theater. In the meantime, Roderick and Wick talk about Roderick's forthcoming wedding to the princess. When they come across a monk, they let him pass. Roderick quickly checks to see if the relics are still there once they've entered the room. Despite the fact that the magic beans have been gone, King Eric's crown has not. He orders Wick to secure the city's perimeter and track down the intruder. The monk realizes they're looking for Jack when he shows up to sell his horse. In exchange for the horse, he offers the boy 10 coppers, which Jack would cheerfully accept if the monk had the funds. The monk offers the beans to him as a form of security. Jack is unimpressed, so he tells him that these are holy relics that he can bring to the abbey in exchange for the money he was promised. The monk cautions him against misplacing or dampening the beans. While the monk has already taken the horse and is leaving the city, Jack is still weighing his options. Before he can run, Wick sends his soldiers after him. They are able to locate him and apprehend him. Later, Isabel arrives to the castle and apologizes to her guardian, Elmont, for complicating his job. Jack's uncle is chastising him for trading the horse for the beans at the same time. He tells him that he needs to mature because he is 18 years old. Simultaneously, the monarch chastises the princess for abandoning the palace without the guardians, declaring she is the future queen. She wonders why he would advise her to marry someone twice her age who she despises. For example, Roderick. Isabel tells her father that she isn't a fragile and frail creature, and he agrees with her. Tells her she looks like her mother. Jack's uncle is enraged, and he hurls the beans across the table, threatening to sell off Jack's parents' remaining assets. He implores him not to do it, but the man refuses. Isabel requests that her father allow her to freely travel the land, but he tells her that he doesn't want to lose her as her mother did, despite the fact that she delivers her case in a formal manner. In front of the king, he offers his final word. She will marry Roderick and stay in the palace. Isabel returns home upset, but she defies her father once more the next night. Wick, on the other hand, is juggling multiple projects at once. Roderick and the monk are debating something. He claims that because the beans were formed with evil magic, they should have been left buried. The beans are uncontrollable. Roderick assassinates him. Later, Jack is concerned about his uncle's safety when he is out in the storm. Simultaneously, the princess is. When she notices the lights on Jack's house, she becomes disoriented and follows them. As Jack prepares to leave the house, the princess knocks on his home, asking him to hunt for his uncle. He invites her inside and they have a conversation. As the ground beneath the home fills with water, approaching a magical bean, Jack and Isabel are a couple. Discuss books and travels. He claims that he got into a brawl in the princess's name in the market, and that they both pretended not to recognize each other. Jack wonders what she's running away from. She responds that she's only looking for a new adventure, and Jack kneels to show that she is. He is well aware of her true identity. Isabel motions for him to have a seat and expresses her gratitude for his efforts in preserving her honor. Only 2 of them are aware that the bean is sprouting beneath the home. He hands her his favorite giant's book and wishes her good luck in discovering what she's looking for. The house begins to quake as a massive stem climbs to the sky, ripping the floorboards wide. Isabel is imprisoned in the farmhouse while Jack is sent outside. The growing beanstalk picks it up, and Jack leaps to his feet to assist Isabel. When Jack arrives home, the water level has continued to rise. He approaches the house and attempts to enter. Isabel pushes him out of the way as she opens the door. He grabs her hand and squeezes it firmly in his. He climbs the beanstalk nonetheless and grabs her mother's bracelet. Without incident, Jack returns to the stalk's foot, but he passes out. The monarch wakes him up the next morning and inquires as to why he has his daughter's jewelry. Elmont recognizes Jack from the market and allows him to tell what happened. He and Roderick will both assist the Guardians in locating and rescuing Isabel. Later, the men are working on a project. As they work their way up the stalk, Roderick is obviously up to no good. Elmont tells Jack what he thinks is going on. The Guardian, however, does not believe in giants. He tells the boy that what he's doing is wrong. Must impress the princess, because she would never be able to marry anyone else if she didn't marry Roderick. He's a commoner, after all. Craw, Jack's second guardian, helps him get to the other side of the stalk, but the youngster collapses. They save him and continue climbing the gigantic beanstalk, losing people along the way at Roderick's request and without Elmont's permission. There are only 6 of them in all. They're still around. They find themselves at the top of the beanstalk the next day when they wake up. They travel to the land of the giants in search of the princess, who is missing from Jack's home. As the guardians pursue Jack, Roderick stops him and threatens him with the rest of the spell beans. He hands over the purse and is warned not to say anything. One of the beans is kept by Jack and placed in his locket. Isabel has left a clue for Elmont and Craw to find her way back. Craw and the others are following Isabel's footprints when Jack discovers the book he gave her, stating to the others that she had to have hid there. They see some damaged branches and decide to investigate. Jack believes she was dragged out of her hiding place by something large and that she is in danger. Elmont instructs the men to divide into 2 groups. He, Craw, and Jack go out and try to find some sheep. When they set up a trap, they hope to catch one. Elmont begins chopping people out when he detects them approaching. They hide from the oncoming giant once they've gotten out. Before catching Craw's signal and hunting him down, it swallows a sheep entire. The man flees, but the giant quickly catches up with him. Leaps. Elmont rushes up to Craw and stabs him just before he is about to be consumed. Being knocked out, the behemoth grabs them both and drags them away. Jack is the one who comes after it. While this is going on, when the group approaches a waterfall, the Guardian tells Roderick to take a break and rest while he hunts for another. In the opposite direction, they deceive him and drive him over the edge. Wick is suddenly grabbed and devoured by another giant appears. Roderick arrives at the throne just in time and saves himself. Jack had tracked down the giant and followed him inside one of their cities. At the same time, Isabel is being held captive. A giant has taken her prisoner and is interrogating her about how she got there. She is deafening when it asks her. She says yes. She claims that she is alone when it comes to people pursuing her. General Fallon, on the other hand, is a 2-headed monster. Isabel is a descendant of King Eric. As everyone knows, he introduces her to his men and informs them that the humans have returned. Suddenly, the other giant appears, bringing Craw and Elmont with him. The giant's commander interrogates the 2 of them, and when Craw retaliates, it eats him. Jack, before he can go to the uproar in the gigantic city, he must hide from 2 giants. Elmont is threatened by the general that if he does not answer his questions, he will eat Isabel. Roderick appears, wearing the crown, after a battle with another giant over the right to do so. In front of him, even the general kneels. When Elmont comes, he is overjoyed. Roderick simply ascends to the throne. Roderick, to his and Isabel's amazement, commands the giants to battle for him. They will assassinate their ruler and take over the world as his army. As soon as the light rises, he instructs them to prepare for combat. General Fallon is irritated by this. Meanwhile, Jack finds the room housing the giant's whole fortune. Then he turns to look across the city and hears Isabel crying for her life as she is being carried away. Her and Elmont are on the verge of being consumed. Jack arrives to save them when the enormous cook is away. Seeks something out. He can't get Isabel free, so he approaches Elmont and hands him a knife. Before putting Elmont in the oven, the monster reappears, nearly killing him with a massive pick. As he pulls himself out of the dough, Jack climbs over to save him before he is cooked. Jack intervenes when the giant snatches Isabel out of the cage and prepares to hack her up. With one of the kitchen knives, he stabs him in the back. Isabel flees after Elmont is released. Jack is dangling from the giant's back. When it collides with the wall, the game is effectively over. Job. Elmont is impressed that Jack was able to slay a giant, and Jack then informs them of a way out. Meanwhile, the monarch inquires of one of his generals at the foot of the stalk whether the beanstalk should be cut down. According to the man, the stalk is both a way to climb up and a way to get down. They speculate on what will happen next. Roderick instructs one of the giants to return to Gantua, to stand at the edge of the cliff and wait for the rest. Elmont is irritated by Jack's sanitization of Isabel's wound. The death of one of his friends. She feels bad about running and caused all of this to happen. She is informed by Jack. Roderick, on the other hand, would have seized control of the realm if she hadn't. He tells her that they need to get her back so that she may make the world a better place when she becomes queen. Elmont wonders where they should go after the bleeding stops. They follow the river to the bank, where they discover the sleeping monster. They should probably wake him up, according to Jack. With the aid of a hive of bees, the 2 men approach the sleeping giant, inserting the hive into his mask. Then dash back to your hiding place. They wait a few moments before the giant awakens up and trips over himself. After that, he goes off the cliff. Elmont disapproves of Isabel and Jack hugging. As they make their way towards, on the cliff's brink, Elmont informs them they must remain behind to care for Roderick. He tells Jack to bring the princess back to him and designates him as her guardian. Isabel says her goodbyes as the 2 go. The monster crumbles at the stalk's base. When the monarch spots him, his general orders him to be killed. The beanstalk was cut down for the good of the kingdom. The general is apprehensive because of the princess. The king takes his sword and goes over to hack it because his daughter hasn't arrived yet. When the general sees the king's commitment, he orders his troops to cut the stalk. Jack and Isabel descend the stalk at the same time, hoping to catch a sight of their metropolis at its foot. They kiss and then are concerned about what is happening down the stalk. The operation to bring the beanstalk down is well underway. Meanwhile, Elmont is on the outskirts of Gantua, waiting for Roderick. He's come too. The massive army approaching Elmont appears as Roderick enters and moves over to the edge. He is attacked, and the remaining beans are thrown away. Within the cave's entrance, they struggle. General Fallon instructs his troops to dig Roderick out when he asks the giants for help. Roderick and his group of pals. Roderick gains the upper hand until Elmont tries to steal Roderick's sword and injure him. Roderick, on the other hand, nearly pushes him over the edge before Elmont grabs his dagger and stabs him. Although the giants dig a breach in the stone, they do not reach Roderick before he dies. However, manage to seize the throne. It is worn as a ring by General Fallon, who changes into the king of the giants. The men have managed to sever the stalk at its base. Isabel and Jack can feel a bit of it further up when it begins to quiver and split apart. The sheer heft of the stalk begins to descend on the guys at its base. General Fallon sits by and observes as Elmont leaps to the top of the stalk before it completely collapses. Jack and Isabel ride the stalk, and he uses one of the stalk stems as a rope to swing away from it. Elmont's remaining stalk approaches the palace and destroys a part of it. He does not, however, jump from the cliff because he believes he is the only one who can save him. He is approached by his general, who emerges out of nowhere and takes her to him. Isabel. He apologizes when she tells him about Roderick. The king pursues Isabel when she inquires about Jack. He compliments Jack, saying that as a father, he can't thank him enough. As they say their goodbyes, Isabel emerges in armor, and he presents her the book to remember him by. With her father, she travels to the palace. On the other hand, General Fallon discovers the what's left of the miraculous beans. He drops them into the water, where they quickly grow. General Fallon prepares his men as the beans begin to bloom on the outskirts of their farm. The giants begin to ascend and push the stalks down even before they are fully developed. General Fallon also joins in. When Jack returns to Earth and sees the giants approaching, he mounts his horse and rides to the king to inform him. The giants appear a short time later. Jack instructs a monk to sound the alarm, which he does. He approaches the king and Isabel, informing them of the giants, and they notice the giants following him. The giants catch up with and slay the king's men as everyone rushes back to the city. General Fallon pursues the king, but the first beanstalk slows them down. From the archers to the boiling oil, Elmont prepares the army in the city. As Elmont waits for the giants to arrive in the city to light up the oil, the giants are hot on Jack's heels. Before Jack can cross the drawbridge, the king enters the city and raises it. He joins in, but General Fallon does as well. He is pushed off the bridge and burns in the oil by Elmont. The other titans are getting ready to enter the fray. Fallon, on the other hand, is able to survive in the water. Elmont meets up with Jack and Isabel again. He informs the king that the giants have the throne and throw a bell into the city before latching onto it. With hooks, there is a drawbridge. The king sends Isabel to his apartments to ignite a beacon to alert the other countries. He instructs Jack to take care of her. Elmont and the others are able to keep the drawbridge open. Isabel takes Jack on a quick cut through the royal tombs, passing King Eric's grave. When they reach the royal chamber, they hear something beneath the floor. General Fallon is a proponent of. They flee through it. The army tries to hold off the giants, but they just keep annihilating them. Their echelon. They hurl flaming threes around the city. The humans fire spears at the giants, making some success in the battle, but the giants simply fight back and smash their weapons. As Fallon and Jack hide beneath the king's robe, he can smell the princess. He tracks them down, and they flee up a narrow staircase. To get to Fallon, he has to burst through a wall. When he tries to kill Jack, he rushes over to them and snatches Isabel. Colossus, just as he's about to swallow Jack whole, pulls out the last of the magic bean and places it in his mouth. In his stomach, the bean sprouts and bursts forth, killing him and destroying the palace. His hand with the crown falls next to Jack as bits of the monster collapse around him and Isabel. Meanwhile, the remaining giants lower the drawbridge, allowing the humans to close the doors. To the metropolis, the men prepare for the giants' arrival and wait for them to break through. The giants drop their weapons when they see the beanstalk tearing the palace apart. Kneel in front of the horde of humans. Isabel puts Jack's hand in hers as he wears the crown. Many years later, Jack is reading the story's conclusion to his children, in which the giants are forced to return to their homeland and the princess marries her farm boy prince. The children inquire about the crown, fearful that the giants may return, but he assures them that the giants will not return. As the crown is rebuilt, it takes on the appearance of the imperial state crown. Now, for example, the crown may still be seen today, thanks to a guide who tells certain pupils about it. It is hosted in Westminster Abbey in London, which is a secure location. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like. It really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.